In fact, let's pick up from that story at Wits University. Students there have intensified their protests on day 2 of taking to the streets over financial exclusion and accommodation issues. The students have vowed to disrupt classes at the tertiary institutions if their grievances are not addressed. Joining us now is Alungile Kamtshe, who is the Secretary General there at SASCO. Alungile, thank you so much for making time. Tensions at Wits University on day 2 of this protest. I saw security has been increased. Things were not looking good earlier.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Actually, it's a situation that we're experiencing in institutions of higher learning throughout the country. If you go to UWC there in Western Cape, we're experiencing similar problems. You go to Walter Sisulu University, we're experiencing similar problems. There's a general crisis when it comes to students' registration and the problem of student accommodation and the funding of students this year. So we're looking at a general problem cut across the entire higher education sector.
What issues are the students raising? At Wits, they've been protesting over the exclusion of students who have historical debt because they're not allowed to register. They're also demanding that NSFAS increase accommodation allowance. Are these the only issues that students have across all the other campuses where there are protests?
Yes, there are similar challenges when it comes to students' registration, more so when it comes to financial exclusions, You see, institutions forget that most of these students are coming from extremely poor backgrounds. So we generally have a problem that is making it difficult for the students to register institutions of higher learning. I mean, I think it's a fair request that students are making there at Wits University. That at least if you are speaking about a student who owes about 150 and below, you must let them register. I mean, how do you take out students who are even close to completing their qualifications, who are on final year, most of them? How do you take them out when they are supposed to complete? How do you expect that they'll be able to be productive in this country if they can't get to that qualification? So it is a prominent request, and it's fair what they are making out there. And when it comes to this problem of student accommodation, I mean, as a South African Students' Congress, we've had a meeting with NSFAS. They've explained their position, and it was quite clear. We have a problem in South Africa of landlords who willy-nilly they want to increase their student accommodation fees because they still want to continue to benefit from NSFAS. You see, it is a problem because NSFAS is struggling to produce funds that are sufficient to carry out our prominent interest of realizing uncommodified education in South Africa. So that's why NSFAS has reached out to all the laws, has reached out to all stakeholders in the higher education sector to say we need to make some certain radical changes. We need to centralize certain functions as it relates to the services that we are providing to students. So we stand with NSFAS on this one, but we also think NSFAS needs to take a position to properly educate on all stakeholders about the functions that they are centralizing. See, now, as it relates to that, you can see already that the academic project in this year will suffer a great loss. I mean, we'll have students that will not be able to go on to their classes because when they get out of the class, they don't know where to go to so that they could carry on with their studies. So it is a general problem. You must. That's why I always wish when I engage with our colleagues in the media sector that you must be able not only to find yourselves in Gauteng. You must go to Thohoyandou, go to KZN, go to Eastern Cape. For God's sake, go to Western Cape, UWC. You find similar challenges. You'll have a moment to tell a better story. Go to TVET colleges. There are untold stories there when it comes to these problems. So it is a general crisis when it comes to this year's academic project. It is threatening this year's academic project. And we are calling upon the Department of Higher Education to end this gulf and this difference that is spouting up between the institutions of higher learning and NSFAS.
Yeah. This is what we see almost every single year, Alungile. How different are the demands and the concerns of students this year to what we often see almost at the start of the academic year every single year?
No, the major difference here is the position that has been taken by NSFAS, which is what we said we support. And that position has fueled institutions of higher learning then to increase their demands, and they place their heavy demands on students. You can't expect a student who is owing that amount of money to be able to pay that amount of money, or 50% of that amount of money, must be about 300,000 of the debt, in order for them to register and complete their qualifications. So institutions are being ridiculous. You see, they are being ridiculous. So, which is why we support when our students unite and they demonstrate, because it is their right to demonstrate. So that is why I was saying it's different, because NSFAS has taken a richly developmental position to centralize most of its functions and the services that they deliver to students. That's what is different, particularly this year.
Yeah. What's the latest on the SRC talks with management? Are they finding common ground?
That's a problem, you see. Management this day, it's what we've identified as the South African Students' Congress, that there exists this gulf between the Department of Higher Education and the institutions themselves, and we've addressed this to the minister. You see, what has been stagnating progress in this particular sector is this problem of institutional autonomy. So managers and institutions of higher learning decide not to engage with students properly on time. They decide not to invite students into the key structures of the institutions that take decisions. For instance, they don't invite them to fee structures of the institutions before the beginning of the following academic year, so that they take them through. Here are particular changes we want to take, and then students repart, and then they engage meaningfully so that everyone understands the position that is being taken by the institution, and they raise these issues with student formations. They raise this issue with the department on time, so that the academic project of the year does not suffer adverse consequences.
Mm-hmm. Are we likely to see the protests continuing, for far longer? And you've spoken already about how the academic program is likely to be affected by the protests. I mean, at the rate where things are going, how are you intervening as SASCO? You're saying that, the SRC and the management are not finding common ground. How have your engagements been, if there have been any, with the Minister of Higher Education?
Yes, we've had an engagement with the Minister of Higher Education in preparation of the state of readiness for this academic year. The Minister of Education is in the hostile person. We are going to continue to have these conversations. Our primary interest is to get all these role players under one roof. You see, we must get NSFAS, we must get the department itself. We must get a formidable way of ending this gulf between the ministry itself and the institutions of higher learning. So that's what we want to push for, not only for this year, not only to address the problems that are emanating this year, but so that there could be longevity in the results that we achieve, you see. But on your question, we are calling on our brothers and sisters not to end the demonstration up until these matters are addressed, up until we are able to have a meaningful conversation with all the stakeholders. That we're calling on our brothers and sisters to continue to demonstrate.
I see that there's an update that Wits University has just provided a few seconds ago, and they're giving us an update on the students that have been marching around Braamfontein, and they're saying that their students were accompanied by a group of about 150 people in Braamfontein. They broke through Yale Road South and Station Street gates, many wearing political party regalia. They came armed with not only water bottles, but they came also with rocks and they threw those at private security officers. And that's when 3 security officers were hurt and they've been taken to the campus health and wellness center. What conversations are you having with the SRC leaders in the various universities where the protests are taking place so that they can ensure that as they march and they raise their concerns, they are doing so in a peaceful manner?
2 things, you see. SRCs are deployees. You see, they come from students, various student formations, but most of them coming from SASCO, of course. They understand 2 things. One, that we are coming from an era where anything had to be obtained in this country was through a violent demonstration. So, you see, if then there had not been steps taken to properly rehabilitate our own society along the lines of social transformation, so that to establish firmly that a dialogue is a proper means of engagement and a proper means of demonstration. So it isn't the fault of students that they know for a fact that to achieve anything in South Africa, you have to fight for it, that they'll be able, and you can't blame students for being armed. They are protecting themselves. Campus managers choose to militarize campuses, you see. You have our own comrades in the form of the African National Congress deployed in government who also allow the militarization of these campuses by campus managers, who then also reinforce by placing deployments of police personnel in those campuses. And what do you expect these students to do? They must protect themselves. So it's not arming themselves. They are providing a defense.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Alungile, yesterday there was nothing for the students to protect themselves from. I don't know if you've seen the visuals, but in fact, Wits University has suspended about 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5 students who were involved in demolishing some infrastructure. There are plenty of videos that are even making their rounds on social media. We've seen the visuals even on television of students yesterday who were going around Braamfontein and they were uprooting some of the infrastructure and demolishing it, and that wasn't them protecting themselves from some militarization of campuses. So what responsibility as well should the students been taking while, of course, you are calling on government and even these universities to stop with bringing in security that can sometimes be heavy-handed when they're responding to these protesters?
Oh, yes. A clear concession is that we always engaged our own comrades, we always engage our activists, we always engage the SRCs, always emphasize to students that vandalism is not accepted. We always engage them that it becomes the last resort to defend yourself when you are facing, a militarized institution. So it becomes the last resort. So it's a clear concession that we always engage our students. But it's rare that you'd find a situation where there would be an attack on a security personnel without a provocation. It's quite rare. These are not animals. They're students. They're in an institution of higher learning. So they are quite well versed about the nature of discourse. So they would not just attack a security willy-nilly. So we do engage with them. We do engage with them that they must be constructive so that the cries of the students are properly captured and heard.
Is there going to be a demand from some of the SRCs that belong to SASCO to have, for instance, Wits University, and I'm not sure about the other universities, how many students have been suspended there, but with Wits, there are a number of students that have been suspended. Is that going to be part of negotiations with the university that before we can even discuss some of our demands, you've got to bring back the students that you have suspended from the university?
Yes, clearly. You see, vice chancellors and managers in institutions of higher learning, they think it's their trump card to chase out students who are demonstrating. No. They do not resolve the problem. They never get interested in resolving the problem. Their irritation runs to the extent of thinking that their trump card is to chase out what they nominated themselves to be ringleaders, which they do not get the full extent of the picture of what is happening on the ground, is to know who is playing what role. All students demonstrated if you are chasing one student, why don't you chase them, all of them out? Then you place a motion of no confidence in your inability to resolve students and resolve disputes that come as a dissatisfaction of the primary stakeholders of what you are doing as a vice chancellor. So it's clear. It goes without saying, it's a first demand. Bring back the suspended students. They need to complete their own qualifications. They have to be productive in this country. For that to happen, they must get their qualifications. Bring them back.
All right. Look, thank you so much for making time for us. Alungile Kamtshe is the Secretary General for SASCO.